Good afternoon and welcome back to Higher Options. We're focusing this afternoon on careers and study options in further education and training. And I'm delighted to say I'm joined by three esteemed guests. Mary Liz Trant, you're the Executive Director for Skills in SOLAS, which is the umbrella body which is responsible, if you like, for further education and training. Also joined by Simon Harris, Minister for Further and Higher Education, and also by Conor Cregan, who's an apprentice, graduate and mechanical project engineer. Welcome to you all. And we're conscious, today's audience is very much second level students who are at this point where the big decisions coming down the track, and we keep hearing about, higher education is kind of the be all and the end all, but further education sometimes kind of gets lost. But Minister, I understand this year for the first time there's going to be big changes for secondary school students when it comes to making their study applications to the CEO. Could you tell me more about that?
Absolutely, and thanks for giving us the chance today to talk to students about this across the country, because this year's CAO page is going to look a bit different, and it's a really important difference. The CAO and Mary Liz and her colleagues in SOLAS and our ETBs across the country have been working to make sure this year, when you log on to the CAO website from the 5th of November, you won't just see your traditional CAO options. You'll also, for the first time ever, be able to see your further education and training options and lots of information and options in relation to apprenticeships. And why is that important? I think it's important because it's going to broaden the conversation. Because as you say, we live in a country where for the last number of decades, I suppose, there's nearly been a bit of an obsession with the CAO and the points race. And look, a lot of good things have come from university progression rates, but there'll be a lot of students listening in today, and they mightn't yet be sure of exactly what they want to do. And they might not be aware of all of the options that are actually available to them. So at the very minimum, this is going to really create a conversation where you'll be able to go onto that landing page and play around with the options and have a look, and also apply through it for further education and training options as well. So I suppose my message to students this year is when you log on to that CAO website from the 5th of November, take the time to look at all your options, because the first time ever, they'll all be in one location. I think what people are going to find out in an awful lot of areas, there are many, many, many ways of getting to where you want to get to. Yes, there'll be certain professions and careers that'll have a very defined route, but actually for many more, there'll be different ways of doing it. And it might be the apprenticeship route. It might be trying something out for a year in further ed, sampling it, seeing do I like it? Or it might be going directly into university. But there is no wrong way. There are just different ways, and I'm really excited about this project. And of course, it's only the first step of a full integration that we want to see between further and higher education.
And I think a lot of students will be very used to the idea that you do your leaving cert in June and you get your CAO offers in August or in the middle of August in normal times anyway. I believe the offers are going to come through for both higher education and further education at the same time, is that right?
Yeah, so we're working really closely with the ETBs across the country and with our FET colleges, and we're trying to get to a point of alignment so that on results day, on offer day, you get all of the offers. Yeah. And I think that's important for parity of esteem as well. And like there'll be students watching this today and they might think, I might want to study law, but they mightn't be 100% certain they want to actually go straight into a law degree. Why not try out the pre-law course that you can do in Cavan College? Sample it for a year, decide if you like it, and then if you do like it, you'll actually be able to progress directly onto the degree programme. So for many, many different reasons, FET may well work for you, and I'd encourage people, explore, and also remember the beauty of this is you can apply for a number of things. Yeah. Fill out the CAO form, absolutely, but also apply maybe to a number of the FET colleges too.
Gotcha, so cover your options.
Cover your options, yeah.
Mary Liz, you oversee this area of further education and training in SOLAS. Why should I consider further education and training maybe over third level or university? What's the unique selling point, if you like, about it?
Yeah, well, the great thing, I suppose, Carl, is it's not either or. So people can apply for both. So that's a really kind of important message. It's not a case of saying, I must decide, I mean, the really exciting thing, I suppose, about the further education and training option is, as the Minister said, if somebody isn't totally sure either of what they want to do or that will they get the points for a certain, academic higher education course, they can actually, there's plenty of opportunities to go in, do a 1-year PLC, for example, and then there's a progression pathway, or they might even go straight into work from there. And more now, there's employers are working with further education providers to actually provide that pathway. I mean, the idea of a 4-year degree and you're finished and that's your education for life, that's completely gone. There are so many opportunities now to have the first, get your first entry-level job, then progress, maybe go back to college or do study in your workplace. So there's just so many opportunities, and for some people that 1 year or 2 year further education course might be absolutely perfect in terms of that next stepping stone. And it's really about those opportunities and looking at them all and keeping your options open at this stage. And also that message that actually that anxiety and that pressure that a lot of people feel, there are so many choices now that there will be something for everybody. And the other really exciting thing about the CAO this year is that link to apprenticeship opportunities. And there are 62 programs now leading all the way up to PhD level. So, and all of them have qualifications. I mean, some of the feedback we've got is that people don't realise that an apprenticeship gives you a national qualification, and it does. Level 6, maybe a degree level qualification, a master's. And there are so many people now, we've over 22,500 people following the apprenticeship route. So, that opportunity, that visibility is going to be there as well. You have to have an employer to get an apprenticeship, but we will be providing help through the CAO page to help people if they want to follow that route, to find an employer in their region and to follow that opportunity.
Great. And Mary Liz, if I want to find out more about those further education training, apprenticeship offers, what's the best portal or the best resource to access?
So, and this is where the CAO platform is going to be so powerful this year. People will click on, and if they pick the further education option, that will bring people into fetch courses. And there will be over 500 further education course options on that people can see straight away and can apply for as well. So it's going to be a really seamless, kind of a one-stop opportunity, which will be great. And then similarly, everything you need to know about apprenticeship and how you go about finding an employer, finding out more, deciding is that kind of workplace option, is that what you want to do? And obviously there's a huge attraction in apprenticeship that you're earning while you're learning. Employers are paying anything from 17,000 to 30,000 a year for apprentices from first year upwards. So it's very attractive for people as a way of getting your qualification, but also getting fantastic skills and experience as well.
Gotcha. Thank you very much. And we were often talking about them being as the smart option, and in many ways they are, given the cost of higher education especially. And Conor, you know all about this. You were an apprentice yourself. Will you tell me more about your route into taking on your apprenticeship and why you opted for that?
Well, I always wanted to be a tradesperson, always. It was always in me. I worked with family and stuff like that. So, but unfortunately in 2010, 2011, the country wasn't in a great state for apprenticeships. So I went off, education, went back to college, I became a personal trainer. But always deep down, I always wanted to be an apprentice. I always wanted to be a tradesperson. So I did that for a number of years till I was about 20, 21, and realised that that wasn't the career path I wanted to take in forever. When you're 18, it's kind of difficult to know that this is going to be your life, and that's not the case. You can pick whatever path you want to go down, and like the guys have said, sample and see what road you want to take. So I went back and applied for my apprenticeship, and I started in 2014, completed it, got my papers, and I've now moved into third education again and continue to upskill. I've now moved into project management, and I'm doing my degree now in TU Dublin for building services engineering, and hopefully I'll progress on and hopefully maybe do a master's. And education, it doesn't stop, you continue to progress.
Yeah. And the title of your apprenticeship, I think, was mechanical project engineer.
It's a mechanical engineer, so a plumbing apprenticeship.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
So what do you think the difference between learning in that environment maybe versus going to college, traditional college courses?
Yeah, well, I've got both the experiences now, being in third level and also doing the apprenticeship, and like Mary Liz said, it's about learning while you're earning. That's a great benefit. Some people, they have to get part-time jobs. It is difficult when you're doing 5 days full in college. You've got to get a part-time job. You're juggling work, social life, and all that stuff. But when you have an apprenticeship, then you've got to focus. You've got your job. But I find set small goals. So like phase 2, 4, and 6 were my goals. The bigger goal being your qualification, and then set maybe 3, 4 years. That's the time period I set anyway. And that's the way I focus on it, and definitely going into third level, that's the way I do it.
Gotcha. Because a lot of people don't realise, as you said, that apprenticeships involve study in college combined with on-the-job learning.
Absolutely, and it's not easy either. There is difficult stages, and there's dark days definitely in apprenticeships. You know, it's not all turn up and go to work and everybody's happy, go lucky. You know, there's difficult days, there's dark days, but there's dark days in every walk of life, and there's dark days and there's tough days when everybody goes to work and you've got to go home. You've got different things, but I definitely approve of apprenticeships. I think they're absolutely brilliant for people.
I know some people often wonder, you know, if I do an apprenticeship, okay, it's going to be great, I'm going to be able to earn and learn, and I'll be really set up for a job, but I'm going to miss out maybe on that college experience, you know, which in my case was turning up very late for lectures and socialising way too much.
Yeah.
Do you feel you missed out on any of that at all?
No, me personally, no, definitely not. I knew the structure I was going to go down, and I knew the road I wanted to take, kind of thing. So that was my path, but definitely no. The social aspect is still there because you do actually go to college. So you'll go to the ETBs now for phase 2, but then you go to TU Dublin in phase 4 and 6. So you do actually go to college, and you do interact with lecturers, and you're interacting with other college students, and you still do get that experience.
Great. Well, listen, that's a great insight into it. So thanks, Conor. The Minister, this broader area of further education and training, you know, we're aware, as you said, there has been a kind of obsession with higher education, and I think we send more students to higher education than perhaps any other country in Europe. Like, what's the ambition for further education and training and apprenticeships? How many students would you like to see choosing this as an option, and why is that a good thing?
Yeah, so I don't have, and nor am I going to set a target, because I think that would nearly defeat the purpose. I mean, what I see my job, the job of government, the job of the department, the job of SOLAS, is providing as many different pathways and options for people to take. There is a real challenge in our country, though, in terms of a shortage of skills. And you're Conor talking there about plumbing and the likes. There'll be many young people watching this today, and I probably, if you ask them what are the two great challenges our country faces, probably a lot of them would say climate change, and probably a lot of them would say housing, and they'd be right on both fronts. To address those issues, you require people with skills. So when I hear government ministers, colleagues, we announce plans, we're going to build X number of houses, we're going to retrofit homes, who's going to do this? The reality is we need to actually have people in our country qualified to do it. And my message to young people today is, if you're concerned about housing, come help us build houses. If you're concerned about the planet, come help us save the planet that's on fire. I mean, that's the downside, I suppose, of the obsession that we've had over the last number of years. I mean, higher education is super. I'm the minister for it, right? But I'm also the minister for further education, and neither is better than the other. But we have skills shortages, and I do think that's as a direct result of not applying that parity of esteem to further education. So that's really my message to the mums and dads of Ireland as well. Your son or daughter will never be without work. They'll never be short of a job. I mean, look at the demands that there are in these areas. We need 27,500 more people to work in construction just to meet our housing targets. We need, again, probably close to 20,000 people in terms of the whole retrofitting and climate agenda. There are so many jobs out there, but they require people. And my message to young people today is, come join us in addressing these big societal challenges, if that's where your interest and your passion is. And please don't think that, you know, going to higher education is better than going to further education. You know, success is liking what you do. And again, further education, it gives you a qualification. We now have a qualifications framework in this country that recognises all of the learning through further education. So you get that piece of paper too, you will get that qualification.
And Mary Liz, you know, we're hearing about skills gaps and shortages, and I know SOLAS, where you are, do great work in analysing where those skills gaps are and where the shortages are. Do you have a sense of, you know, for school leavers who are thinking about potential career options, where are the skills gaps kind of most acute as you see it?
Yeah, well, the Minister just mentioned, obviously, the two really big challenges we have as a country. And, you know, we need to build 33,000 houses a year from next year on, and then 40,000 a year from 2030. So there's that's one big demand, and we're actually involved in a study at the moment for government on, you know, what does that mean in terms of skills, and how do we respond, how are we agile, you know, and certainly the feedback we get from young people is, you know, they're really concerned about this. They're, you know, this is all our future, you know, and also all our future that's sustainable and has the green agenda right at its heart. So, I think there's we're going to have definitely gaps. We've got a good pipeline, but we're going to have gaps in areas, like those key craft areas, plumbing, electrical, and all of the kind of the green areas as well, and retrofitting, and all the way up the line. I mean, they're the kind of the sort of the fundamental skills, but then project engineers, the kind of work that Conor's doing now, and all of the bioenergy management. There's going to be so many opportunities for people, and to have really exciting careers, and careers where people feel they're really contributing to the future of the country and to the future of our planet as well. And things have moved on a lot. People kind of think, I think still that, gosh, this is tough work. This is work on on a site where there's so much, and Conor will back me up on this, I think, as well. There's so much technology now. There's so much agile new ways of doing things that actually, even all of those careers have actually changed so much and transformed so much. And luckily, we've got so many more women now coming into the area. I mean, in construction, for example, the numbers of women are still far too low. We're getting there. We're moving. We now have, I think it's 1,300 women apprentices in the country, where we had, I think it was 26 5 years ago. So we've come a long way, but we've a lot more to go. And I don't know, Conor, if you just maybe your experience of just what it's like working, in this area, and just the opportunities that are there.
Yeah, well, Conor, would you tell us about that? What was for you when you took on your apprenticeship and you saw those opportunities? Did you see very clearly that there was a job out of this kind of quite?
Yeah, absolutely. And I kind of got very lucky in my career. I was able to be guided by a couple of mentors, and I saw their progression through their careers, and it kind of does give you a big boost when you see other guys progressing and moving through the ladders and stuff like that. So it was always something I was kind of watching. People moving, supervisors moving into foremen, moving into project managers and contracts managers and the stuff like that. So I was very lucky, and I had good mentors like that.
Gotcha. And of course, as you said earlier, you can head into an apprenticeship really at any age. You don't have to go straight out of school either. You can go and expand your horizons and then come back to it as well.
Absolutely, yeah. And look, I know a couple of guys who've actually done 2 apprenticeships. They've done electrical and mechanical, and they're well equipped now to go into industry and be project engineers, project managers, and they would be very, very successful. They're probably already doing degrees and stuff like that. There absolutely is no age. And we've got guys in our company from 30 years up from first years. I think there's even a guy that's 35, 40, and changed careers. He had a career for many, many years, 20 years, and for whatever reason he thought he wanted a career change. And as Mary Liz said, the payment scheme is very, very good. Companies are well investing, and I mean, if you give back to your company as well, and they will definitely look after you, and move you into 3rd level education and progress you through the companies. And there's great companies in Ireland, and they're really looking after their staff.
Sure. And Minister, Conor touched on that topic of returning to the workplace at different ages, and this buzzword of lifelong education is really talked about in education circles. But we haven't had a great track record in Ireland, have we? Like, other countries have been ahead of us in terms of the number of people who go back into education. Do you have any sense as to why that has been the case?
Yeah, we know where we need to be in relation to this, and I'm working at the moment to develop proposals. We're calling it a skills pact, or a pact for skills, as to how we can interact with business, particularly smaller businesses, SMEs in Ireland, to make it easier for them. Because if I was talking to a lot of small business owners, what they'd say is, well, I really want to provide opportunities for my staff to upskill or reskill, but you need to make it viable for me to do that. Yeah. It's easier for a large multinational to do that. So we want to work on that. One of the things, for example, we've brought in the budget yesterday, and it'll kick in from January, is an employer grant for any employee that becomes an apprentice. So in other words, if a company wants to take on an apprentice from January, there will now be a core grant for any apprenticeship in Ireland. Up until now, it's only been for the craft apprenticeships. Yeah. So for example, if somebody in the hospitality sector wants to provide their employee with an opportunity to upskill through the apprenticeship route, they will now receive an amount to be decided, but somewhere between €2,000 and €3,000 a year as a core grant to make that easier. I think that's one of the parts. I think the other is, again, culturally, we talk about when I get interviewed, I always get asked about college students as though everybody's 18. And the reality of the situation is more and more that's not going to be the case. You're going to see people dipping in and out of the education system at different stages of their career, and sometimes just to get a piece of a module, if you like, or a piece of a qualification, be it in green skills as one area. So I do think we as a government are duty bound now to come forward with proposals to make it easier for employers and SMEs to enable and empower their staff to access lifelong learning whilst working.
Gotcha. And the costs of this, because the cost of higher education particularly has been in the news recently, but I know there's been some changes in further education and the charges that are there for courses.
I'm really delighted that yesterday we were able to abolish the €200 levy for a post-leaving cert course. So the PLCs are the largest part of our further education and training system. Many people could access them free already if you had, for example, a medical card or if you were in receipt of SUSI grants. But there was still a significant number of people, well above 10,000 every year, having to pay a €200 government levy effectively. And we've worked with SOLAS to abolish this. So from the next college year, that levy will be gone. And it does two things. One, I think it helps promote inclusion, but two, hopefully it also helps create a conversation by the awareness around abolishing the levy.
And Mary Liz, on that issue of the financial side of things facing students, you touched on it briefly there that, if you are taking on an apprenticeship, for example, you're earning and learning, but you're earning more, of course, as you progress up the ladder, if you like, the more years you accumulate in your course. Could you talk to me about that, how that operates and what students can expect?
Yeah, so there's kind of there's a sort of a variation. So the craft apprenticeships, a number of them have got kind of agreed, sort of guidelines that employers work to. So by the time somebody gets to fourth year, they're very close to actually getting their full, what they would get as a qualified craftsperson. And then other apprenticeships, so I mentioned, that amount of from between 17 and 30,000 a year. So, if somebody's starting first year at that kind of introductory rate, and then each year that they complete, whether it's a 2-year or a 3-year apprenticeship or 4 years, they will progress. And employers, because they want talent and they really value, we know that apprentices are contributing to companies. Employers tell us within a couple of months of starting, they're on the ground, they're contributing. They want to look after their apprentices and they want to keep them, and hopefully keep them on after they qualify. So, certainly the feedback we get from apprentices is, that it's very important as a salary, and it's also, it's recognising their skills and what they're contributing to a company. So, I mean, I think as a model, it's very successful and very attractive to both employers and apprentices as well.
Could I just, because I'm conscious there'll be a lot of people watching this today thinking of going to college next year or in whatever guise. There's obviously a lot of discussions around the cost of going to college, and it's important we have those discussions and it's important we do more. But I also do want students to know that there are a lot of supports out there, and I think it's really important that they familiarise themselves with those supports. So if you go to the website SUSI, SUSI.ie, you can see how to apply for a SUSI grant. We made changes yesterday that will kick in for this year's 6th year students, where we've increased the income threshold, so we've increased the amount of money you can have coming into your house and still qualify for a grant. We also have increased the grant by €200, and we've, without getting into the technical detail, there was a rule that if your family home was 45 kilometres away from the college, you got a much higher grant. We've reduced that to 30 kilometres. So I'm just saying that in terms of accepting we have to do more, but just to tell students to familiarise themselves with that, because nearly, not quite, but nearly 50% of students in our country going to higher education access financial support through the SUSI scheme. So while there's work to do, I wouldn't like anyone watching this today to think that it's unattainable for them because of a financial worry. There's a lot of support out there, and indeed there's even more than I've gone into, so to familiarise themselves with those supports.
And SUSI isn't limited to university education
at all. And that's the other side, so you can also obviously very much access that in the further education space too.
Gotcha, great. And Conor, we were talking about the financial side of things. For you, in those early years of your apprenticeship, were you struggling, given the wage, if you like, that you were on, or actually was it a godsend for you?
Yeah, it was really good actually, because the industry that I was previously working in, you kind of had to put a lot more. I was a personal trainer, so buying materials, you're always reinvesting in all new equipment and that type of thing. But I kind of did the same as well. I reinvested in tools and materials and stuff like that. So you're always upgrading your toolbox and getting that type of stuff, So you're kind of spending your money on that. The wages wasn't great, no, but at first year you can't expect to be. But you got to look at the bigger picture at the end of it. I think that's the really important thing, and that was the important thing for me. I knew where I wanted to go to. I had that 4-year goal to get qualified, and you look at that picture and you talk to the guys around you, and you see, you obviously discuss salaries and you discuss where you want to go and what they've done, and they're buying houses and they're buying cars and they're going on nice holidays, and you're thinking to yourself, that's what I want to do. I want to do that. Yeah, it's smaller. You're on a smaller wage, but the bigger picture is the better thing.
And I guess by the time you finished your apprenticeship, in some ways you were probably even more employable than someone coming through, a traditional degree, because you'd built up all of that on-the-job experience. Do you think that was the case?
Yeah, definitely. And like Mary Liz said, it's your contribution as well. If you buy into what's being given to you, it's a big advantage. You know what I mean? If you're kind of in the shadows and you're not really participating and you're kind of guiding through it, but there's still exams to be passed. This definitely isn't handed to you as no more a degree is handed to you. You still have to work hard at this, and there's not only phase 2, 4, and 6. There's also the other phases on site where your company must sign you off, and you must be approved by your company to say you can go on to the next stage. And that's important in the salary as well, because your salary doesn't increase unless you pay or unless you go through these stages as well. So there is your contribution to gain back. Do you know what I mean?
Sure, gotcha. And Minister, we're talking about apprenticeships quite a lot, and many people will probably think of apprenticeships still in craft terms, whether it's plumbing, being an electrician, or in construction, which are hugely important. But it's broadened hugely, I believe, in the last few years.
Yeah, it's a really important point, because I'd say if I walked down the street and asked people what's an apprentice, they would reference the trade apprenticeships, and I've made the point we need a lot more people doing that. But there are also ways of perhaps doing things that you might more traditionally have thought you needed to go to university to do them through an apprenticeship route. So, for example, we've worked with the insurance industry, and you can now do apprenticeships in the insurance sector. As one example. There's also stuff in the space around science, quantity surveying, engineering. There's everything from farm managing, accounts technicians, and I think Mary Liz will correct me. We've 62 approved programs, 17 in the pipeline, more, and then about 19 more at an exploratory phase. So again, to students, to their parents, to their teachers, their guidance counsellors, look at the range of apprenticeships, because it's not just the traditional craft apprenticeships now, it's much, much broader than that. And again, a point Mary Liz makes, you could be watching this today with a degree. Do you know you can do a master's through an apprenticeship? Do you know you can get your PhD in Ireland through an apprenticeship? And this is where I won't say we're not at the races, but this is where we're behind our European counterparts in terms of people seeing an apprenticeship as an equal way of getting that piece of paper that they would have gotten in a traditional university.
Yeah. And Mary Liz, do you have a sense, maybe, why have we historically kind of looked down on, if you like, a lot of apprenticeships? Let's say parents weren't always urging their children to do them, particularly during the recession, I think, as well. It became something that, you wouldn't want to do that, What do you think? Why is that the case, and why is it changing?
Yeah, I think it's maybe something to do with our history, Carl, and where we've come from as a country, and we're just over 100 years old, and that sense of people really wanting to be mobile and get on, and I mean, parents only want the best for their children, and are trying to guide them and give them the best experience. And I suppose we still have there's still people more and more have kind of got good levels of education, but there's still a lack of familiarity and a lack of understanding, and we're not the only country. Like a lot of other countries around the world have had this focus on academic third level as the way to succeed, and it absolutely is a way to succeed. But the key point is it's not the only way to succeed, and there are so many options there, and there's an option for everybody, and there are so many different ways to get to where you want to go. And I think obviously I'm work this day in, day out, and I sometimes scratch my head as to why there's still this kind of reticence or reluctance to kind of consider, or for parents to advise their children to look at the apprenticeship route. But it is changing, and I think we've got some fantastic stories on our apprenticeship.ie website, listening to, say, Conor talking about his experience. Like, I think the message is getting out there that actually this is a really interesting way to develop a career and have a really good career. And the more we talk about it, the more we have these kind of conversations, the more visibility there is on the CAO platform. Those key conversations now in December and over Christmas, where families are sitting down and going, okay, here's a whole range of options. Let's and have those kind of, really good discussions about, well, what's the best step forward here? And it's not the be all and end all, it's one step. And then there's so many choices after that, so, and I think that's, because I know certainly, I mean, I think still people feel that they have to get it right next summer. If they're in their Leaving Cert year. And I think that message that actually, if you're not sure, don't worry. There are lots of choices, and you might choose something and it'll give you another avenue and another sort of set of kind of things to think about, and then you move to the next step.
Gotcha.
I've been visiting, now that you're allowed with the COVID restrictions, I've been visiting a lot of FET colleges over the last while. And what strikes me is the amount of students that I meet there who say to me, and this is across the board, guaranteed anywhere I go I get told this, the amount of students who say to me, I didn't get what I wanted in the Leaving Cert, didn't get my place in higher education, I was a bit gutted, I missed out on CAO day. I decided I'd give this FET college thing a try. And now it's the best thing that ever happened to me. And they feel it's nearly like, this mightn't be the right phrase, but it's nearly like a transition year after school. So it's nearly like an opportunity, for some, that it's actually an opportunity to explore, to develop, to find where your passion is at, to dabble in a few different things and decide, is this really what I want to do with the rest of my life, without kind of signing up to do a 4-year degree. It's also much more local to your home. So there tends to be a FET college within a close proximity to most of us. So I would say that to students, the amount of, let's say this to secondary school students, the amount of students that I meet in FET who kind of got there because they just missed out on the Leaving Cert, and they say to me, if I had known about this earlier, I would have actually chosen this route anyway. And I think that's a really important lesson that I learn as I talk to students.
And Conor, what's your sense of the awareness of these further education options and apprenticeships among your kind of contemporaries? So let's say when you were in school, was it something that was being talked about? Did people know about it?
They didn't, no. Not in 2010, 2011, no. Really, third level education was to go and do your degree. It was really, that was the main important thing. And I always reiterated I wanted to be an apprentice. I always wanted to be a plumber. That's what I wanted to be. Unfortunately, it wasn't there. But the third level, it was definitely go to college. That was fill out the CAO. That's what I did. And I actually did get my degree that I wanted. I was going to be an electrical engineer. And I deferred it for a year because it wasn't the route I wanted to go at that point in time. So I took the foot off the pedal, said no, had a look at my options, went back and went to be a personal trainer. Did that for 3 years. And I never went back to the electrical engineering. Took the mechanical route, done my apprenticeship, and now I've worked my way back around to where that would have kind of taken me in that road anyway. So it went a long way, if you want to say it, but yeah.
And if I'm a student and let's say my strengths are that kind of hands-on learning rather than the academic side, would you recommend this as a particular option, do you think?
Absolutely, and just what Mary Liz said about the stigma, there was a type of stigma around being an apprentice or being a tradesperson where they maybe, I don't know, the guys going to Snickers or, they're going into the shops and the Snickers and everybody kind of looking at them and going, but that stigma, I do believe, is gone. Absolutely, it's a completely different industry now. But yeah, it's a lot different to what it was back then, 100%.
Yeah. And Mary Liz, you touched on this earlier, for some people who do take that further education training option, it is a stepping stone, but then for others it's a destination in and of itself, so like it's home to a lot of people on different career journeys and career paths.
Absolutely, and there's a huge proportion of further education courses that actually, will get you into a job, and with all those opportunities that come after it, and just to give one example, it's a kind of a real interesting one, Artisan Bakery, and the Bretzel Bakery, for example, they were really short of bakers, and worked with the local education training board and developed a traineeship, which got people in, got them skilled up, and then a fantastic career, as bakers, and so that's just an option, and people will be able to see all those kinds of options, everything from, pre-law, pre-nursing, bakery, the construction area, engineering, like it's just so diverse, and over 500 of those courses will, people will be able to see those. So it just, and I think what it does is, no more than other higher education options, it just gives people a sense of the possible, what is possible. And maybe people are looking at things going, jeepers, like Conor said, he knew what he wanted to do, but a lot of people, just aren't that sure. And you know, and it's a great way to, you know, even looking at the options and making a decision about, you know, what to apply for is a great way of kind of starting to narrow it down. And I think guidance counsellors have a really important role, and we work very closely with guidance counsellors, and we'll be working with them now leading up to CAO to make sure that they're able to kind of, you know, guide students through that full range of options, apprenticeship, further education, higher education. And you know, and I think that's where, again, I think things have moved on, you know, where there is that awareness and that encouragement for students now, 4th year, 5th year, 6th year, and even earlier, to sort of say, actually, you know, it's not just about the academic third level route. There are so many opportunities here, and you know, trying to help people find the right path for them at that point, you know.
And you were saying, if I'm a student and let's say I'm looking at further education as a stepping stone, how do I find out if a particular further education course has a link with, let's say, a higher education institution or a university?
So that will be there. That'll be part of the information that's there on the, you know, there's a kind of a, you know, a summary of the details for each course. When you go into Fetch, when you click on that link into fetchcourses.ie, it'll provide that information. You know, so it's all available there. And then also the local Education Training Board, where the course is on offer, they'll be able to help and provide guidance as well. So you know, so it'll all be there for students if they're researching that.
And are there any areas which, you know, we can still forge closer links? Because I'm thinking of, you know, nursing and engineering, or sometimes areas where people think, well, I'll do a FET course, but does it necessarily link to third level? Is there work we can do on that?
Yeah, well, I mean, I think, you know, I think it's moved on a lot. I mean, there are progression pathways to most professional courses, like, you know, those regulated courses that we're talking about. They're all there now, and the opportunities are expanding all the time. So, you know, so there aren't any major gaps, you know, that now maybe somebody will go, yep, what about this, you know, but I mean, and I think if there is, that's something that everybody's really willing to work on.
Great.
But you know, the connections and the pathways are actually very strong now at this stage.
Minister, you wanted to speak?
Yeah, well, I think if Brian Mooney was still here, he'd be mentioning pre-nursing as one, and he's right, as he always is, because I mean we do have. I've met a number of people who've done pre-nursing and they've done really well and have gotten top marks, and there hasn't been enough corresponding places. So while I'm talking today about the landing page and the CAO reform on the 5th of November, that is kind of stage one of the journey. There's another piece that needs to come after that, and it'll be part of our conversation about funding models for higher education, but about how you can progress, yes, through the traditional CAO route, but you can also progress through the FET route. And I think that will be a way of perhaps alleviating over time some of the points race pressure and the likes too. But I'm not satisfied that we're in a situation where you can do exceptionally well on some, let's say, pre-nursing course, and then we can't keep you in Ireland to get your nursing degree when we know we need more nurses. So that's just an example, but there's been huge progress made, but there's certainly areas that we do need to do more, and that's one.
Gotcha. And Conor, just to wrap up, if I'm a student and I'm thinking now about maybe further education or apprenticeship, have you any advice for a student who's a bit unsure? You know, maybe they have an interest in it, but they're not sure it's going to suit them. What would you say to a student?
Talk to a family member who has maybe a trades background. That would be definitely something. You know, this country we've got a lot of those out there. You know, I know we need more, but we've got a lot there, and I'm sure within the family members there's going to find one or two. Maybe go work a Saturday with them. That'll give you a good experience. That's something I did. I sampled a couple of different trades and different backgrounds, and that's where I found where I kind of was best off doing. So yeah, talking to people like that's definitely one step. Yeah. Sure, great. Well, and your own story, I'm sure, will inspire many of the students watching here. So listen, thank you, Conor. Thank you, Mary Liz. Thank you, Minister. I hope you found that interesting and stimulating, and I hope that it's going to clarify your choices. So be sure to use your time here with Higher Options to look around at all of the various education institutions, further education colleges and apprenticeship options. Ask questions. This is a great time to do so. You'll never have so many people available to talk to you and answer your questions. There's no such thing as a silly question. They've heard them all before. So listen, thank you once again to my guests here. Thank you to you at home or in school for watching. And we'll be back in a few minutes for another panel discussion on careers in hospitality and tourism. Thank you.